This is video 2 for lesson 3 in unit 6 chemical equations. So we are going to talk about the last two types of reaction categories, and that is single replacement and double replacement. So their names kind of tell us a little bit about it. So in single replacement, a more reactive element replaces a similar element in a compound. So our general form is this. M comes along and kicks A out of there and forms a compound with B. So A gets kicked out. So it's like if you and your partner were dancing and some thug comes along and bumps in and starts dancing with your significant other, you're left alone. Well, that's this reaction. So an example of this is potassium plus sodium chloride. When this occurs, the potassium is more reactive, so it kicks Na out of there and bonds with Cl, and we get Na all by itself. So our starting materials for this are always going to be an element and a compound. Double replacement, we have two things swapping. So two compounds swap ions to form two new compounds. And the general form here is AB plus XY. So A and X are going to swap places. So we're going to end up with A paired with Y and B paired with X. An example of this, if we have plumbous nitrate plus potassium iodide, the K and the PB swap places, and so we're going to get K paired with NO3, and we're going to get PB paired with I, and we have to write the correct formulas for it. But we end up with two new compounds. So our starting materials here are going to be two compounds. So now if we go back and look at all five of these, we have different starting materials for each thing. So by knowing these five different categories, we can predict what they are if we're given an equation. So our last page for this lesson, we have five different examples. So we are just going to go through and identify which of the five types each one of these equations is based on what is happening. So if we look at number 1, we have a compound. It is turning into two or more things. So we're going from one thing to two things. That should be decomposition. Number 2, we're starting with an element, silver, and a compound, gold 1 chloride. Well, we end up with silver paired with chlorine and gold by itself. So the silver is kicking gold to the curb. Well, if we go back to our example problems, we have one thing replacing another. This is a single replacement. The third example, if we look here, we have something with some C's and H's plus oxygen, and we get carbon dioxide and water. Well, a compound that has C and H in it is a hydrocarbon, so this must be combustion. Our fourth example, W, that's an element. Cl2, that's an element. So we have two elements, and we're getting tungsten chloride, a compound. Two things to one. That looks like a synthesis. And then down here, we have HCl. Well, that's a compound. NaOH, that's another compound. And if we look, the H and Na swap places. So now we're going to have Na with Cl and H with OH, which is just another way of writing H2O. So we have two replacements. This is a double replacement.